Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again, co-host Richie O'Leary, co-host Alec Crowdhamel. Rutgers got a big win last night on the hardwood. The Scarlet Knights went out to Seattle on the second leg of their West Coast trip and won 89-85 in overtime over the Huskies to not quite lock in a Big Ten tournament appearance, but pretty close to a lock now to make the Big Ten tournament. Talk about that game. We'll talk about some of the official visitors that have scheduled their OVs for May and June on the football side. And we'll also talk about a potential commitment coming tomorrow for the class of 2026 for the Rutgers football team. Before we get into any of that, though, this podcast is presented to you once again by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with the odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so last night, a bunch of standout performances, starting with, first and foremost, Dylan Harper, 34 points on 9 of 18 shooting, 4 of 8 from 3, shot 14 free throws last night, made 12 of them, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and only 2 fouls on that. Dylan was probably the best he's been all season last night, arguably. Some other standout performances from Ace Bailey, who started off slow, but in the second half had a standout performance, 18 points from him, and Jeremiah Williams had 13 points. Only 11 points off the bench on the night for the Scarlet Knights. What were some things that stood out to you from the performance last night? Alec, we'll start with you.
I mean, obviously, the play of Dylan Harper, it was his first 30-point game. Amazingly, it was his first 30-point game since that Alabama game out in Vegas in the Players era. He was his usual self. He was basically unstoppable going downhill. He really finished off a lot of these drives with ease, got to the free throw line again, like you said, 12 of 14 from the line. He was just his usual, self, where he looks like one of the best players in the country. And then next to him, there were 2 other double-digit scorers. Ace Bailey finished with 18 points. Like you said, a slow start, but he finished with a game-high 8 rebounds. And particularly late in that game and in overtime, he got some really impressive rebounds. There was one that I remember on the offensive end where he just shot straight up, grabbed the rebound. I think he either drew a foul or it got deflected out of bounds and kept Rutgers' possession. He made some big shots in that second half as well, especially when it seemed like Washington was, gaining some of the momentum. He came through, hit some big ones. Pretty solid game for Ace Bailey. It wasn't his best, especially when you think about playing with foul trouble. He wasn't able to play as much, but he got picked up his 4th foul with 12 minutes left. He came back in with 8 minutes left, I think, and then he played for most of the rest of the game. And the fact that he was able to do that with 4 fouls was really impressive. He's done that a few times where he gets himself into foul trouble early, but then kind of holds off and does a really good job being himself without picking up that 5th foul. Jeremiah Williams, I thought this was one of his better games of the season as well. He looked much more in control on both ends of the floor. He defended really well. He also had that huge steal to put Rutgers in position to send the game to overtime, made 1 of 2 free throws. It was a really strong game for Jeremiah Williams, I will say. A lot of the other guys didn't get a whole lot from some of the other guys. Lathan Somerville was all right, but the problem was he got in foul trouble early and often he ended up fouling out with 2 minutes left in regulation. He looked solid on offense, but he kind of struggled against Great Osipor on defense. Not too much in terms of some of these other guys. Lathan finished with 8 points, and then 2 guys finished with 5, and 2 guys finished with 3. It was pretty impressive to see Tyson Acuff on the floor for a lot of that overtime. Even though he only scored 3 points, 1 of 5 shooting, he had 4 rebounds. He just seemed like Peichel trusted him as that steadying presence on the floor in overtime to make good decisions on offense and things like that. So really big win. Probably my biggest takeaway is that this Washington team is not great. They had some impressive pieces, of course. Makai Mason had 20 points. It seemed like he was getting open all the time, and he was converting. Great Osipor also fouled out along with Mason. He only played 26 minutes, but he had 17 points. It felt like anytime he got the ball on the block, he was converting and doing something good. Zoom Diallo, the true freshman, he took a bad shot at the end of the game, but he looked really good otherwise. So this Washington team has talent. They just made too many mistakes and ultimately fell.
How about you, Rich? What was your takeaways from last night's game?
I mean, Alec just recapped the entire thing, basically. So, I mean, everything he said and then more. Dylan, great, of course, unstoppable when he gets to the rim, draws fouls, draws contact. And even when he's drawing that contact, he's still making those baskets. It's incredible to watch, and I don't think we've, in our lifetime, have ever seen a player of his caliber at Rutgers. And it's a shame because we're probably not going to be a Debbie Downer here, but we're probably not going to see him in the tournament, if I had to guess. And it's a shame, but Ace, like you said, did really well, or struggled early, then bounced back really well, playing with that forced foul for 20 minutes or something like that, I think it was. Super impressive. Dylan Grant was solid. Dylan Grant coming in playing 5 minutes late after Lathan Somerville got fouled out. Pretty impressive. They just don't have big men. There's no paint presence on defense, which stinks. There's no presence on defense at all, to be honest with you. So as good as it was, a good win. Jeremiah Williams I have to give a shout out to too. He had a pretty good game. There's still a lot of things lacking with this team. They shot really well, but this is also against the wall. I hate to be the Demi Downer of the group, but 46 paint points. If Great Osobor doesn't foul out, the game's probably over. And you still gave him a shot in the end, which is crazy after everything that happened. Now, mind you, they also gave Rutgers a shot because Rutgers started out overtime, 0 for 5? Like, this was just a brutally ugly game.
I think Aaron Brightman tweeted it out. Rutgers went 0 of 7 in the extra period.
Even
in
worse.
Terms of shooting. All their points came from free throws. Rutgers scored, attempted 37 free throws on the night and made almost 71%. So 26 of 37 from the line. They forced 27 fouls from Washington, just compared to giving up 16. Overall, I mean, Washington is just not a very good team. They were a shell of themselves without great Osobor on the court.
Mm-hmm.
In general, though, I mean, this was just all about Ace, Dylan, and Jeremiah, essentially, on the scoring front. We got 76 bench minutes. We only got 11 points out of those 76 bench minutes, as opposed to 149 starter minutes. We got 78 points. But Dylan Grant was sneakily very good last night. His stats don't jump off the page. He only had 5 points, 3 rebounds, but I thought he made a lot of really good defensive plays, was in the right position a lot, walled off a lot of guys really well, and just a guy who does a lot of like the glue guy stuff really well. So another good performance out of him, in my opinion.
That sneaky cut down low too when they double teamed up top is wide open for the dunk. Like, he does everything right. Like, he is just a really good Pikel molded player. It's that tall, lengthy 4-man that can just rebound and just do the basics for you and hustle, of course. So he's a great player.
He's got some amazing athleticism too. Like, that wasn't something that we talked a ton about, but like, he can dunk from so far away from the rim. It's just always surprising when he does it too. He didn't have any like crazy dunks this game, but a couple games ago there was one that just really stood out to me where he jumped from like a foot in front of the foul line to dunk it home.
Him going top of the key ISO though, I don't ever want to see it again. I know it worked, but like, please don't do that. God, I can't believe it worked. It was wild, but good for him.
So Rutgers is at 13-14 on the season now, 6-10 in conference play. They have 4 games remaining on the schedule, starting with a home game on Sunday versus USC, then 2 road tilts at Michigan and at Purdue, and final game of the season is on Sunday, March 9th at home versus Minnesota. Obviously, we talked about this. The only way they make this, the NCAA tournament is winning the whole damn thing at this point. NC State did it last year where they weren't going to make the tournament. They win the ACC tournament. They end up making the Final Four. Not saying that this is going to happen for this team. I don't think that they're even going to win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament. But this is a game that, brings some optimism, some hope back. But how do you guys see the season finishing off for hoops? Richie, we'll start with you. You don't have to give it a record prediction, but do you think they continue to build positive momentum, or do you think that this will sputter out?
It's going to be interesting. This USC team is better than Washington, but they have to travel across the country, and it's not easy.
And they play tonight as well.
Oh, so there you go. So it's even a shorter rest too. Mind you, Rutgers is probably not practicing today either, or doing anything today because they probably left at God knows what hour and probably got home at God knows what hour. So they'll probably have a day off. They'll go practice tomorrow, probably practice Saturday, and then Sunday game time. But it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. And that's the one that really is going to determine how the rest of the season goes, I guess. Minnesota's a lot better than what their rankings say. They played really well lately. Michigan and Purdue, I'm just going to call them losses more than likely. They're two of the top Big Ten teams, and they're both away. Playing at Chrysler and playing at Mackey especially is just extremely hard. But you win USC and you're probably just damn near locked into the Big Ten tournament, and that's all you could really ask for, and then go from there and see what you could do. You said NC State did it last year. Everyone saw it, and they not only did it in the ACC tournament, they made a magical run in the NCAA tournament. It's not impossible, just very unlikely. So if I had to guess right now, I'll say anywhere from 1-3 to 2-2. I just can't see them winning those away games. I think those are going to be extremely tough.
One quick thing on Minnesota before I get your take, Alec. Minnesota's won 3 of their last 4, 6 of their last 9 overall, and 4 of their last 5 road games. So
it's tough.
Yeah, Ben Johnson kind of just saving his job over the last month or so. Yeah, that team seems like they're figuring it out at the right time. I think they can go 2-2. I agree with Richie. I think those 2 road games at Michigan and at Purdue, I would say either the 2 or 3 best teams in the Big Ten. It's going to be really tough to win those games, especially since, even though they got the win yesterday, the defense still has a lot of fixing to do. And that first game against Michigan, it came, Michigan really didn't shoot the ball that well. I'm sure they'll be, in a much better spot in that aspect when they're on their home floor. And this Rutgers defense has struggled to contain the 3-point line. They really struggled with it yesterday, especially with at the rim as well. So that's definitely going to be a really tough matchup for both games too. I think they can beat USC. I just worry about Desmond Claude, who's really been kind of coming on lately and playing very well. And then, of course, the same aspects I was talking about, although USC isn't as much of a 3-heavy team, so that might favor Rutgers a little bit, but there's definitely some shooters that you got to watch out for. So it's going to be tough. I think they go 2-2. I think they beat USC. I think they're able to string together 2 straight wins, but then the road games are really tough. And I think that they can beat Minnesota, and they will beat Minnesota too. So I think that would put them in the Big Ten tournament. So I think they can win a game there and then probably lose a close one in the second round. Maybe they can pull off an upset, but I don't think they get farther than that.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of see it the same way you guys do. I'd set the line at regular season wins at 1.5 for the rest of the season. I don't have the I could take a look at Bart Torvik lines, but I would be surprised if Rutgers is a favorite in more than 1 game remaining. Or more than 2 games, I should say, rather. So currently they are a less than 1 point favorite, according to Bart Torvik, in the USC game. They are 13.5-point dogs against Michigan. They're 14.5-point dogs against Purdue. And they're a 4.5-point favorite against Minnesota, which is a little surprising. But anything else on hoops before we transition to some football recruiting talk that we haven't touched on recently? Anything you guys, final words you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I told you guys already, but after talking to some people, it sounds like there's going to be not complete, but pretty damn close to complete overhaul of this roster. I know there are a lot of guys that could return. I just don't expect them to return. I think Pike knows his seat's getting a little warm, despite it not really getting warm. It's weird to say that because there's no AD. There's a president that's leaving in 4 months, less than that.
Mm-hmm.
And interim AD still in charge, and they're not going to hire a new AD until the president's hired. So new AD might not come until July, and you're not firing a head coach in July. So that's just not happening. Even if it comes in June, you're still not firing a head coach. You're not firing a head coach unless it's in April, May, maybe,
or
maybe?
March 15th.
Yeah. So it's just not. He's gonna get 1 more year no matter what. And I think
he's got 6 years, $25 million left on his deal too.
Plus, he's earned some goodwill. This guy, I know people don't want to hear it, but he broke a 30-year tournament streak. Technically should have been 3 tournaments in a row. If you don't count the play-in, it should have been 2 tournaments in a row, but you got to count the play-in. I don't care what anyone says. So he's still brought Rutgers from the world's worst program in high major to respectability. So you have to give him at least one more year. He's going to get that, whether people think it or not. And I think they're going to overhaul this roster. Now, how he's going to do this, I don't think he does the OC thing that everyone wants. They want this offensive-minded coach. I just don't think it happens. I think he's going to go back to his old ways and say, hey, this worked for me before. I'm going to do it again that way, my way, and that's just how it's going to be. That's what most coaches would say. If it was the complete opposite situation and it was an offensive guy and his defense struggled, he'd be like, screw it, I'm going all back in on offense. I'm not sticking with the 50-50 thing. And, hell, it works for some teams. Alabama's got, best offense and bottom 60 defense, something like that. Maybe worse if you go by points per game. But, yeah, he's going to go back to his old ways, and I think you'll see some movement, not by Peichel's decision on the coaching staff. I think more so someone's going to leave, and I've been very adamant that we keep hearing, or we heard it all offseason, I should say, this past offseason, that Brandon Knight's probably not going to be returning. Could he return? Very possible. If he does return, there's a kid in NJIT that's a pretty good scorer at point guard that's just sitting there. That's his godson. So could be a portal target. There's a lot of other names out there that are emerging as going to enter the portal. Per Troy Donovan, there's like 100+ names already. It's going to be portal hell. It's going to be the wild, wild west. And they're convinced that with this revenue sharing, they're going to be able to compete with other schools in terms of paying recruits, and that's just the way it's going to work. Now, he's probably going to hire a GM. That's just a given at this point. Who it's going to be, who the hell knows? So we'll just have to wait and see. But I expect it to go back to Peichel defense first basketball next year.
And I know you're trying to put a positive spin on this, and I appreciate that, Rich.
I'm trying.
But I think people are just kind of seeing that things have slowly gotten worse year after year. Mm-hmm. And I don't really see a great way to fix this. Like, Peichel likes playing a certain way, and he likes developing players, and that's just not really the way things work anymore. And my concern with him is that you just said he wants to kind of like run it back and, not change his philosophy, not, really do anything significantly differently outside of hiring a GM than he has in the past. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just like, okay, so we're just going to like run full speed into a brick wall again with our heads down and hope that we don't break our necks again. Like, if we're just expecting different results from doing the same thing, what's the definition of insanity off the top of your guys' heads?
Yeah. Well, I posted on the board, we talked about it too, is portal hall is kind of ass too.
Yeah, the portal results aren't there. The high school recruiting outside of this, like the last three classes prior to the Ace and Dillon one have been total dog shit. Since Mawat Mag got hurt, you guys want to guess the record?
Oh, they don't even have 20 wins, right?
Well, they have more than 20 wins.
More than 20 because they had 13 this year. But they have last year 15.
They have less than 20 wins against like top 200
That's what
opponents,
it is.
I think.
That's what the stat was. You're right. It's not pretty, I know that. But give us the total amount of games, actually.
So the total amount of games in that time frame is a very nice number. I'll let you guess the number.
Hey,
so we've played in 69 games since Mawat Mag tore his ACL at MSG. You guys want to guess the overall record in 2.5 seasons since then?
69.
I'll say 31-38.
I'm not even going to – that's exactly on, Alec. That's wild. Take a bow. Hopefully you don't have that open in front of you. That is crazy good.
I would never.
31-28.
Did you actually know or did you just guess?
I just guessed. I was like, all right. I was doing like some of the math in my head, like how many games they've won the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Just pathetic. Like, that is pathetic. And this is an even further slow slide. Obviously, we won that tournament game against Clemson. We came down to the wire against Houston. But ever since, we lose the opening round game against Notre Dame. We get snubbed the following year after the collapse with Mawat Mag. Last year, obviously, you could point to a lot of things as to why things fell off. But this year is like the culmination of like people just were giving every benefit of the doubt this program has gotten the last how many years? This was the year there is no more benefit of doubt to be given. Big changes need to happen. And I think if there's not big changes, you're going to see a lot of the fan base just lose all interest in hoops. It's going to be like 2017 all over again.
A lot of the fan base is pissed already about the season ticket renewal thing.
That was not well handled by the athletic department. For those of you who don't know, this is an important PSA for season ticket holders. They are
Hopefully you're not hearing this for the first time, but you might be hearing it for the first time.
Yeah. You are currently, if you are a basketball season ticket holder, you are being auto opted in to renew for the following season. There is a 2-week window starting on April 1st until April 14th where you can opt out. But you have to call your ticket rep. It's very tone deaf, and it feels like maybe this isn't the case, but for outwardly facing, not being in the athletic department, it feels like basically they know that they're going to lose a lot of season ticket holders.
Weird timing.
And so they're putting this out there to maybe hold off on that. And I doubt that they're going to keep people's money if it does come to that. I know that that's what Max was saying yesterday on the unaffiliated pregame show. But, man, just one unforced error after another with this situation.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. But...
So let's talk about some football recruiting. We have some official visitors who have announced their official visit dates in May and June. This feels like a pretty early announcement for a lot of these guys, but we need all the news we can get right now, especially positive. So, Rich, you want to run down some of the guys that have confirmed that they are taking an official visit?
Yes. So they're going to do 2 weekends right now. They could add a third weekend. This is what they did last year. It was majority of their top targets were going from weekend 1 and weekend 2. Now, other schools spread it out differently. Other schools will have some of their lower level targets in that 4th weekend, and they might end up canceling those visits depending on what happens in those first 2 weekends. Rutgers is just adamant that these 2 weekends are it. So it's going to be the weekend of May 30th and the weekend of June 6th. As of right now, the weekend of June 6th is going to feature all of the commitments, or current commits, I should say. Elias Koch, Dazier Carter, Chris Hewitt Jr., YD Collier. Maybe add a 5th name there tomorrow. We'll get to that. But weekend of May 30th is where it gets all the big name targets. And this is where it's going to be a little interesting. All these kids that have scheduled visits so far have been on campus for junior days over the past couple weeks. It was the January 25th and the February 1st junior days. So after that, they either went to another school then the week after, or just a dead period automatically. But tight end DJ Howerton out of North Carolina, Grimsley, North Carolina, produces at a crazy high rate. Just had one of the best defensive tackles in the 2025 class in Travis Shaw. He's the kid that's probably their top tight end target right now. I think I might be wrong on his name, but I think the other kid they're looking at is Seth McFarlane, who also visited on a junior day, but hasn't scheduled anything yet. They want at least one tight end this cycle. That's probably going to be it. Offensive tackle Tyler Duell out of Westchester East, Pennsylvania High School. 4-star offensive tackle. I know people are already worried because he's visited Penn State a million times over. Doesn't have an offer from Penn State. I know he's lower on the board for them, but he's one of Rutgers' top offensive tackle prospects. He's massive. He's huge. I think as long as they get him on the campus, he's going to probably commit. 6'6", 290 to be exact, or 6'6", 285 to be exact. DePaul Catholic defensive end Logan Nagel. This one's going to be a little bit tougher. Rutgers hasn't done great with Big North kids, but hasn't done bad either. There's certain situations where it's worked out, like say, let's see, Taj Sanders more recently worked out pretty well. But then you have John Forrester that ended up not working out in the end. So we'll see what happens here, but he just got a Michigan State offer yesterday. They're trying to get him on campus. He has a North Carolina State official visit, so they're going to be the main comp right now. We'll see what kind of happens with that one. And then Tavian Branch, defensive tackle / offensive guard. He's in a weird scenario where I have him currently looking as Penn State as a leader. I was also told by someone else that that Oklahoma is the leader. Rutgers is right there with the 3 of schools. Now, Rutgers is pursuing him as a defensive tackle. Oklahoma wants him as a defensive tackle. Penn State wants him as an offensive guard. So we'll kind of see how that one plays out. He prefers defensive tackle, but he's open to playing either. Most of those Pennsylvania kids in the middle part of Pennsylvania are probably going to stay at Penn State if they get the offer. But this scenario is a little bit different because he wants to play defensive tackle more than guard. We'll see if it ends up how these official visits, but he has official visits to all three right now. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But right now it's a pretty solid visitor list. Like Tavian Branch should probably be a 4-star. Logan Nagel's borderline 4-star. Tyler Duell is a 4-star. And then DJ Howerton is, I think, a mid 3-star, high 3-star. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. But they, so far, pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a lot of talent coming to campus. There'll be a ton more, I'm sure, as more commits also line up. There'll be more visits on that second weekend. Speaking of which, there's potentially another addition to the class of 2026 coming tomorrow. Anthony Hall, his nickname's Big U-Haul, which love that nickname for an offensive lineman. He is announcing his decision. Rutgers is a finalist. Rich, how do you feel about this situation heading into tomorrow?
Put in a future cast back on January 30th after his unofficial visit to campus / MSG, whatever that. I don't know how you consider that an unofficial visit, but it is. He also visited campus back in late November for, I don't remember what game was November 23rd. You guys, was that the Illinois game?
Illinois, yeah.
Yeah, well, not the best game to visit for, but he has a top 3 of UNC, Rutgers, and Tennessee. Tennessee, he's never visited. Or I'm sorry, he visited in March 2024. I'm just going to tell you right now, Tennessee's out. UNC, he did visit on January 18th. But after talking to him and talking to people close to him following that Rutgers visit on the 25th, it seems like Rutgers was the favorite right then and there, hence the future cast. Now, UNC is, of course, still pushing. They want him pretty badly. It's still Bill Belichick at the end of the day, but he's only visited there once. He's been to Rutgers 3 times since July. And what we've said with most of these commits, look at that. He visited for that barbecue event in July, like almost every single one of them. He also was at a spring practice last year too. So I think this is all but done for Rutgers. And it's going to probably be and when it does probably get past that finish line, it's a good shout out to Charlie Noonan, who, a guy we kind of questioned if he would be on the staff this year a little bit because they did hire a new assistant linebackers coach and a new linebackers coach and kind of passed over Noonan, so to speak. So we'll see where he kind of fits in this new staff and everything. But he's got very deep ties to that New England area. And Dexter Southfield High School up in Massachusetts has produced a couple Power 5 prospects over the past couple of years. And I know he's listed as an offensive tackle at 6'5", 320. I see him more as a guard. I don't know if he's athletic enough to play tackle, but we'll wait and see how he kind of develops. Either way, it will likely be a pretty good get. I'm not going to say it because he didn't commit yet technically. So,
well, love to hear that. He's a guy that seems like the staff is pretty high on, so we'll have more on him if he does end up committing to Rutgers.
Wink, wink.
So we covered a lot here. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we head out? Don't all jump at once.
Anything?
It's all good.
I mean, I'll go if you don't want to go.
Go for it.
I mean, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Rutgers baseball, baby, back. Got their revenge on Kennesaw State. 2-1 series win. Starting pitching staff, which was so questionable looking at just on paper, looked damn good. The relief pitchers, that's where they fell apart a little bit in that one game. Gave up a 3-0 lead, 3-1 lead in the second game. So they technically should have swept a pretty good Kennesaw State team that was in the A-Sun championship last year and 1 game away from winning or making the NCAA tournament. So that's good, but big test this weekend. 4-game series against Grand Canyon University, the Antelopes. So it's going to be an interesting one because they are the favorite to win the WAC, Western Athletic Conference. They're 2-2 on the year with wins against San Diego State and Big Ten, fellow Big Ten conference member Nebraska. I think they lost to Vanderbilt and someone else in some weird multi-team event they had. Every game's on ESPN Plus starting at 8 p.m. Friday. 2-game doubleheader on Saturday, 3 and 6, and then game 4 will be 2:20 on ESPN Plus. So you can watch them all too. But they looked pretty good. Offensively, decent. Pitching staff, pretty fucking good. Let's see what happens.
And for Grand Canyon, that's an impressive win over Nebraska, a team that's usually pretty good in the Big Ten as well. So that's definitely some strong competition to go up against. Women's basketball plays at Washington tonight. 9 o'clock tip-off on the other plus, Big Ten Plus. Yeah, that should be an interesting one. Washington, according to ESPN's bracketology from Monday, is the last team in. So they're still fighting for their bubble lives. So expect to get everything that Washington has to win this game, because that would be a quad 3 loss if Rutgers were to win. So Washington's trying to avoid that at all costs. And then they play at Oregon on Sunday. That game's at 5 o'clock, 1 hour before the USC game at 6. Will Hume and Miller play? I lean towards no. I guess we'll have to wait and see until 6 o'clock tonight.
And did she travel?
That I'm not sure about.
Okay, fair enough.
The saga
So we'll have to wait and
continues
see.
with Keelan Miller.
Crazy. We're now approaching, 5 days since my tweet saying, hey, you still haven't emailed me?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you
don't
still
hold your
haven't
breath
gotten
there.
an email.
Ah, look at that. Let me check my email. Nope, nothing. That is that's going to be an interesting ending. That's inevitable at this point.
So we're also running a giveaway contest.
We're gonna do that
2
soon, I
prizes: Slam magazine cover, the signed card. That
That's
will be
what it was.
announced
See, Alec,
at
I
the
didn't know
end
what
of the
the
month.
prizes were.
Yep, that'll be announced at the end of the month. If you'd like to get involved, you haven't entered yet. 2 ways to do it. First way is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That'll get you 2 entries to the contest. Reference the number 400 somewhere in there. If you'd like to get into the contest another way, you can leave a comment on this video below on YouTube, referencing number 400 in some way. That'll get you 1 entry. We want to thank everybody who's entered already and everybody who's given us a 5-star review. We've seen our numbers go way up for that, and that helps us grow the show. So we really do appreciate that. But that is all we've got for today. Stay tuned to your podcast feed tomorrow. We might have another episode if a certain player that we referenced here ends up committing. But for me, Richie and Alec, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.